Morning light touches the sea near Australia. Beneath that quiet water lies a city of coral. It grew slowly for thousands of years. Fish move through bright shapes. Turtles pass like old travelers. Few people know how long this living place has been building itself. While we follow this story, you will hear simple ocean words like reef, coral, tide, and lagoon. You will also hear calm, natural English that helps your listening grow without pressure. Like the video, share it with someone who loves the ocean and tell me in the comments, have you ever seen coral or clear ocean water? The story of the reef began long before modern cities, long before large ships crossed the oceans, even before many of the first human towns appeared. Long ago, the ocean floor near Australia looked very different. The sea moved in and out across the land. During cold ages, ice covered large parts of Earth. Ice held water. Because of that, the sea level stayed lower. Sea level means how high the ocean stands against the land. When ice melted, water returned to the ocean. The sea slowly rose again. Land that once stayed dry slipped underwater. Coral began its quiet work there. Coral may look like a plant. Many people think it is a sea plant, but coral is an animal. Each coral animal is very small. It looks a little like a tiny soft tube. Around its mouth are thin arms called tentacles. Tentacles help it catch food floating in water. One coral animal cannot build much, but millions together can create a reef. A reef means a long, hard structure underwater made by coral. These animals slowly build small skeleton homes. The skeleton is hard. It stays after the coral grows. Its new coral grows on top of old coral. Year after year, the reef grows upward. It grows slowly, sometimes only a few centimeters in a year. But thousands of years pass. Slow work becomes something huge. People often forget how powerful slow time can be. Near the coast of Australia, coral found warm water. Warm water helps coral grow well. Clear water helps sunlight reach them. Sunlight is very helpful to coral. Inside coral live tiny algae. Algae are simple living cells that use sunlight for energy. They give coral color. They also give coral food. Coral gives the algae a safe home. The algae give coral energy. Two living things helping each other survive. Nature often works this way. Over thousands of years, coral walls grew longer and longer. Small reefs connected with other reefs. Gaps filled slowly. Little by little, a giant reef system formed. Today, it stretches more than 2,000 kilometers. That distance is longer than many countries, but long before modern maps, people already knew this sea. The First Nations people of Australia lived near these waters. They knew the tides. They knew the fish paths. They knew the quiet shapes of coral below. Many groups lived along this coast for thousands of years. They had stories about the sea and the reef. Stories passed from elders to children. Some stories spoke of sea spirits who shaped the coral gardens. Spirits in these stories were not frightening. They were guides and protectors. The reef was not only a place for food, it was part of life. People fished in careful ways. They watched seasons. They respected the water. Respect means treating something with care because it matters. I think this shows something gentle about human nature. When people live close to nature for a long time, they often learn patience. The reef rewarded patience. Fish gathered in its shelter. Turtles visited its quiet lagoons. A lagoon is calm water inside a reef ring. In those lagoons, the water stayed softer than the open sea. Children learned where shallow coral waited. Fishermen learned where deeper channels ran. Life moved with the tide. Tide means the rising and falling of the ocean during the day. High tide covered coral. Low tide revealed parts of it. For many centuries, the reef stayed part of this quiet rhythm. Then, ships began to appear. Wooden ships with tall sails crossed the Pacific Ocean. European explorers searched for new land. They did not know these waters well. In the year 1770, a British ship called HMS Endeavour sailed near the reef. The captain was James Cook. Cook guided the ship along the Australian coast. At night, the sea looked calm. The surface gave no warning. Below the water, sharp coral waited. Late one evening, the ship struck the reef. Wood scraped against coral. The ship stopped hard. Sailors rushed across the deck. Water began to leak inside. Men pumped water for hours. They threw heavy cargo into the sea. Cargo means goods carried on a ship. For a moment, the reef almost ended that voyage. The crew worked through the night. Slowly, the ship moved free. Cook later wrote about the dangerous coral maze. Maze means a place full of confusing paths. To sailors of that time, the reef felt frightening. Yet to the coral animals below, nothing special had happened. The reef continued its slow life. Fish still moved between coral towers. Small sharks hunted in quiet channels. Sea turtles returned again and again. Life continued in patient layers. Years turned into decades. Decades turned into centuries. More ships passed these waters. Some avoided the coral, some did not. Maps slowly improved. Sailors learned the safe routes. Science also began to grow. Naturalists traveled with ships. Naturalists are people who study nature. They looked closely at coral for the first time. They realized coral was alive. They saw tiny animals building stone homes together. That idea amazed many scientists. A reef was not only rock, it was a living city. As the 19th century moved forward, more people studied the reef. They wrote about bright fish, giant clams, forests of coral branches. Still, the reef remained distant from most of the world. Few people could reach it. Few people could see its quiet beauty. For a long time, the reef stayed almost secret, but the modern world was slowly approaching the ocean, and that change would bring both wonder and worry. Long after the early explorers passed these waters, the reef continued its calm life under the surface. From above, the sea still looked peaceful. Waves moved in slow lines. Sunlight entered the water and turned into soft, blue light. Below that surface, thousands of small lives continued their work. Coral animals opened their tiny tentacles each night. They caught small food in the water. Fish moved between coral branches. Sea stars crawled across the reef floor. Turtles returned to the same places again and again. The reef was never silent. Even in calm water, it held quiet movement. Small clicks from shrimp, gentle scraping from fish that eat algae, the slow brushing of water through coral shapes. By the late 19th century, scientists began to spend more time near the reef. They travelled by boat from the Australian coast. Some stayed on small islands near the coral. These scientists studied the reef with great care. They looked at coral skeletons. They watched fish behavior. Behavior means the way an animal acts or moves. They tried to understand how such a huge living structure could exist. One idea slowly became clear. The reef was not a single wall of coral. It was a giant system of many reefs. Thousands of reefs, each one growing slowly, each one shaped by currents, storms, and sunlight. Some reefs formed long lines. Others formed rings around lagoons. Some grew close to the surface. Others stayed deeper under the sea. Together, they created a complex underwater world. Complex means many parts working together. This discovery changed how people saw the reef. It was not just a beautiful place, it was also a living system that depended on balance. Balance means different parts staying in harmony. Coral needed warm water. Fish needed coral shelter. Sea plants needed sunlight. If one part changed too much, other parts could suffer. For many years, that balance continued. Fishing boats worked near the reef. Small coastal towns grew slowly along the Australian shore. People visited the islands. Scientists kept studying coral life. Then the 20th century arrived. The modern world brought faster ships, larger cities, bigger industries. Industry means large systems that produce goods, often using machines. Factories grew in many countries. Cars filled roads. New airplanes crossed the sky. Life moved faster. At first, the reef still seemed far away from these changes. Tourists began to visit in small numbers. They traveled to the reef to swim and dive. Diving allowed people to enter the underwater world directly. Divers wore masks and air tanks. They floated above coral gardens. They watched fish schools move like clouds. For many people, the first dive above coral felt magical. Bright blue starfish rested on sand. Parrotfish bit pieces of coral rock. Their teeth sounded like quiet taps. The reef looked full of colour and life. But scientists slowly noticed something troubling. Some coral areas began to lose their colour. Coral usually appears red, orange, yellow, or purple. These colours come from the tiny algae living inside coral tissue. When coral becomes stressed, those algae leave. Distress means pressure or harm that makes living things weaker. Without algae, coral turns pale white. This process is called coral bleaching. Bleaching does not mean the coral is dead immediately, but it is in danger. Without algae, coral loses its main source of energy. At first, this bleaching appeared in small areas. Scientists wondered what caused it. They studied water temperature. They studied pollution. Pollution means harmful materials entering water, air, or land. As years passed, a clearer picture appeared. The ocean itself was warming. Water temperature had risen slowly across many seas. Even a small rise in temperature can affect coral life. Coral is sensitive. Sensitive means easily affected by change. When the water becomes too warm, coral struggles to survive. During the late 20th century, several large bleaching events occurred on the Great Barrier Reef. Entire sections turned pale. For scientists who loved the reef, this was a quiet moment of sadness. Many had spent years studying the same coral colonies. Colonies means groups of coral animals living together. They had watched those colonies grow slowly year after year. Now, some of them were fading. It felt like watching an old forest weaken. Yet even in that difficult time, the reef showed strength. Some coral survived the warm periods. New coral larvae settled on old skeletons. Larvae are the tiny young form of many sea animals. These larvae float in the ocean before they attach to a surface and begin growing. Little by little, life returned to some damaged places. The reef reminded people of something simple but powerful. Nature can heal, but healing takes time, on time and care. During these years, the Australian government began stronger protection for the reef. Large parts of the reef became marine parks. A marine park means a protected ocean area where rules help protect sea life. Fishing limits were placed in certain zones. Boats followed careful paths through coral channels. Scientists continued their research. They measured coral growth. They tracked fish populations. Population means the number of animals living in an area. They also spoke to the public about the reef's future. Many people around the world began to learn about coral reefs for the first time. Documentary films showed colourful fish and coral towers. Photos revealed giant schools of fish circling coral heads. people started to understand the scale of this underwater world. And the Great Barrier Reef is so large it can even be seen from space. From high above Earth, astronauts can see its long, pale shapes in the blue sea. Yet its true life exists in very small details. Tiny coral animals, tiny algae cells, tiny fish hiding in narrow coral holes. All of these small lives create the larger beauty. I think there is something deeply humbling in this. Great wonders sometimes grow from the smallest living things. Still, the reef story was moving into a new chapter, a chapter where human choices would matter more than ever before. And the question slowly rising across the ocean was simple. Could this ancient reef continue its slow life in the modern world? As the new century arrived, the reef still stretched across the ocean like a long, quiet wall of life. Boats continued to glide above its coral gardens. Divers entered the water each day. They floated slowly, careful not to touch the coral below. Under the surface, the reef looked almost timeless. Coral branches spread like underwater trees. Small fish darted between them. A sea turtle might pass, calm and slow, as if it had all the time in the world. And in a way, it did. Sea turtles can live many decades. Some scientists believe certain turtles return to the same reef areas their whole lives. Yet the ocean around them was changing. The change was slow. So slow that many people did not notice it at first. Ocean temperatures rose little by little. Storms grew stronger in some years. Water sometimes carried more pollution from the land. Rivers flowed from farms and cities into the sea. Those rivers carried soil and chemicals. Chemicals are substances used in farming or industry. When too many of those chemicals reach coral reefs, algae can grow too fast. Thick algae can cover coral surfaces. Coral needs clean water and sunlight. When algae blocks the light, coral becomes weaker. Scientists studying the Great Barrier Reef began to speak more openly about these dangers. They explained the link between climate change and coral health. Climate change means long-term shifts in Earth's temperature and weather patterns. The planet warms slowly as certain gases increase in the air. These gases trap heat. That heat spreads across the atmosphere and oceans. Warmer oceans place stress on coral reefs across the world. In some years, large bleaching events affected big sections of the Great Barrier Reef. From the air, parts of the reef looked pale and quiet. For people who had studied coral for many years, those moments felt heavy. They remembered reefs full of deep color. Now they watched sections struggle to survive. Still, the reef did not simply disappear. Life remained. In many places, coral recovered slowly. Small fish continued their daily patterns. Giant clams opened their shells to the sun. Researchers worked carefully in boats and small labs near the reef. They studied coral species that showed stronger survival. Species means different kinds within a group of living things. Some coral types handled warm water better than others. Scientists hoped those stronger corals might help future reefs survive. Divers also planted small coral pieces onto damaged reef rock. These small pieces are called coral fragments. Fragments grow slowly, like coral seeds placed by careful hands. The work required patience. A fragment the size of a finger might take many years to grow into a large coral colony. But that slow growth has always been the reef's way. Tourism also changed during these years. Visitors came from all over the world to see the reef. Many arrived with curiosity and respect. Tour guides explained how fragile coral can be. Fragile means easily damaged. Divers learn to keep distance from the coral. Boats use special anchors that do not break the reef. Education became a quiet form of protection. When people see the reef with their own eyes, many feel a strong wish to protect it. A diver might float above a coral garden and feel very small. Thousands of fish moving together, a ray sliding across white sand. Sunlight falling through clear water like moving glass. In moments like that, the reef feels alive in a deep and ancient way. Dear listener, there is something else that becomes clear in such moments. The reef does not rush. It grows slowly. It repairs slowly. It survives slowly. Human life moves much faster. Cities rise in decades. Technology changes in a few years. News spreads in seconds. The reef measures time differently. A coral colony may grow for hundreds of years. A reef structure may grow for thousands. This long patience may be one of the most beautiful lessons the reef offers. Nature builds quietly, layer by layer. Today, satellites watch the reef from space. Scientists monitor water temperature. Local communities care for the coastal environment. Many people across the world now understand the reef's value. It is home to thousands of marine species. Marine means related to the ocean. Fish, sharks, turtles, sea snakes, coral animals, and many other forms of life depend on this vast coral system. But beyond science and tourism, the reef also holds something deeper. It reminds us how living systems depend on balance. Tiny algae helping coral animals, coral creating shelter for fish, fish keeping algae growth under control. Each part supports the others. When balance weakens, the whole system feels it. Yet when balance returns, life slowly rebuilds. Even now, young coral larvae drift through the reef each year. They search for hard surfaces where they can attach and begin new colonies. One tiny larva attaches to an old coral skeleton. Months pass. A small coral shape appears. Years pass. The coral spreads branches. Fish begin to hide inside it. A tiny beginning becomes part of the reef again. If you ever see a photograph of the Great Barrier Reef, the image may show bright coral and clear blue water. It may look peaceful and simple. But now, you know the deeper story inside that quiet scene. Thousands of years of patient growth, ancient cultures living beside the sea, explorers crossing dangerous coral waters, scientists studying small coral animals, and today, people across the planet thinking carefully about the ocean. Next time you see clear water over coral, even in a photograph, you may pause for a moment. You may remember that the reef below did not appear quickly. It grew slowly through patience and balance. And far beneath the waves, even now, tiny coral animals continue their quiet work.